She didn't just outsell them, she buried them. Every single name on that roster, without even trying. A 20-year-old from the Philippines walked into the most powerful organization in women's tennis, and the numbers she generated didn't just raise eyebrows. They ignited a boardroom explosion nobody saw coming. What happens when one player becomes so commercially unstoppable that the institution built to protect the sport starts feeling threatened by her? What happens when the jerseys of Swiatek, Goff, and Sabalenka, three Grand Slam champions, collect dust on shelves while a single Filipina's name sells out in 48 hours across 4 continents? Stay locked in, because this story doesn't just reveal what happened behind closed WTA doors. It exposes a power struggle that has been brewing beneath the surface of women's tennis for months, and it's far bigger than anyone imagined. To understand why boardrooms erupted and investigation demands flooded internal memos, you have to first understand who Alex Eala actually is, because most of the world is still catching up. Born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, Philippines, Alexandra Meniego Eala achieved a career-high WTA singles ranking of world number 29 on March 16, 2026, making her the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA Tour history. Read that again. The highest-ranked in history at 20 years old. But rankings alone don't capture what happened. Numbers on a leaderboard don't explain why stadiums across Abu Dhabi, Auckland, Dubai, and Miami transformed into something resembling a rock concert the moment her name appeared on the draw. Rankings don't explain why Coco Gauff, the reigning queen of women's tennis, felt the need to publicly apologize to fans for keeping them waiting before a match against Eala. Eala's popularity has been compared to Coco Gauff's already, with fans queuing outside to get in to her matches at the Australian Open. Her popularity continued in Abu Dhabi, Manila, and Dubai, and she's currently one of the biggest ticket shifters in tennis. Ticket shifter. That phrase alone should have told the WTA everything they needed to know, because ticket shifting means money, and money means power, and power in the corridors of any governing body means politics. Her breakout 2025 season saw her break into the top 100 after a semifinal run at WTA 1000 Miami as a wild card, registering back-to-back top 10 victories over number 5 Keys and number 2 Swiatek. A wild card, not a seed, not an established name, a wild card who walked in through the front door and dismantled the entire house. Sky Sports lead presenter Gigi Salmon gave her verdict on what Eala could achieve. I would say, in terms of her appeal, the crowds that follow her, she might already be the biggest star. Might already be. Present tense, not future potential, present reality. And that reality reached merchandise tables, online stores, and Nike retail platforms with a velocity that no one in the WTA's commercial department had modeled, projected, or prepared for. When a limited edition Nike shirt dropped bearing her name and the sampaguita flower, the national flower of the Philippines, Nike released an Eala-inspired limited edition shirt designed by Filipino artist Georgina Camus, featuring the national flower of the Philippines overlaid on the All England Lawn Country Club's grass courts. The response? Staggering, unprecedented, borderline chaotic. And that is precisely where the trouble began. Stay right here, because what the WTA discovered in those merchandise reports didn't just surprise them, it terrified them. Picture a standard WTA merchandise review meeting. Spreadsheets, quarterly projections, names like Swiatek, Sabalenka, Goff dominating the top rows, as they always had. These were the faces the organization had built its commercial strategy around. These were the names corporate partners paid premium rates to align with. Then one name appeared at the top of the column where it had never been before. Alex Eala. Not second, not third, first. And not by a marginal lead, by a margin so dramatic that senior commercial executives reportedly requested the figures be verified before distribution, because the idea that a player ranked outside the top 25 could generate jersey and merchandise revenue exceeding the combined sales of 3 Grand Slam champions seemed, to anyone operating inside the traditional tennis marketing framework, impossible. Except it wasn't. It was Tuesday. Filipino supporters have done wonders for ticket sales at every tournament Eala enters. But there is a knock-on effect for other players. When Eala isn't closing out sessions, empty seats follow. This is not a small market. The Philippines alone carries a population exceeding 115 million deeply passionate sports supporters. Add the Filipino diaspora spread across the United States, the Middle East, Europe, and Southeast Asia, and you have a fan base that doesn't just watch. They purchase, they travel, they buy jerseys at 3 a.m. to catch a live stream. When Alex Eala visited Nike World Headquarters in Oregon, her portrait was displayed alongside other Nike global ambassadors across all sports in the legendary tunnel, with a caption reading, "History in full bloom." Nike didn't place her there as a courtesy. Nike placed her there because the data demanded it. There are plenty of rumors filtering through the tennis grapevine that Eala is being lined up for some big sponsorship deals in the coming months, with some A-list companies looking at Eala's story and seeing comparisons to Emma Raducanu after her 2021 U.S. Open win. Raducanu, that comparison matters more than it seems. Emma Raducanu's merchandise explosion after her U.S. Open win generated a commercial tidal wave that lasted 18 months and reshaped how tennis brands allocated marketing budgets. Eala hadn't even captured a Grand Slam singles title yet, and she was already producing Raducanu-level numbers. When those figures arrived at the desks of WTA board members, the reaction was not celebration. The reaction was a question nobody wanted to ask out loud, but everyone was thinking. How did we not control this narrative? And what do we do now that we can't? The investigation demand didn't come from one voice. According to sources close to the matter, multiple board members raised formal concerns, not about Ayala's talent, not about her marketing, but about the structural imbalance her commercial dominance was creating within an organization that had spent decades carefully managing which players received premium promotional real estate. The machine had a system. Eala broke it. Not deliberately, not maliciously, simply by being exactly who she was. But here's the part that will make your jaw drop. The investigation wasn't just about merchandise numbers. It was about something far more personal and far more damaging to the WTA's reputation. Internal investigations in professional sports rarely stay internal. Someone always talks. A memo surfaces, a frustrated executive sends an email to the wrong person, and suddenly, what was meant to stay behind closed doors becomes a headline. The demand for investigation into Ayala's merchandise performance exposed something the WTA had quietly struggled with since her emergence, the uncomfortable reality that their existing commercial hierarchy, built around European and American stars, was structurally unprepared for a phenomenon rooted in Southeast Asian fan culture. Every scheduling decision surrounding Eala came with trade-offs. Tournament organizers faced a dilemma. If Filipino viewers tuned in specifically for Eala, they naturally caught whoever played before her, meaning that exposure could help other players build their own followings. But many would switch off once her match ended, and you can't blame them at that hour. This wasn't scheduling complexity. This was the WTA staring directly at a new world order and debating whether to embrace it or contain it. Sources indicate that the investigation framing centered on merchandising equity, a term that sounds procedural and neutral, but carries a devastating implication when applied to the only Filipino player in the top 30. The argument, as reconstructed from multiple accounts, went something like this. If Ayala's commercial pull was distorting market expectations and shifting sponsor attention away from established WTA stars, was that a natural market force or an anomaly requiring correction? The answer, to anyone outside that boardroom, is breathtakingly obvious. The market wasn't broken. The market was speaking, and it was speaking Eala. Eala has received staggering fan support at the tournaments she has played this year, and this is fully expected to continue at the Miami Open. The Filipina star has already reached superstar status in the Philippines after her rapid rise and trailblazing accomplishments. Superstar status, not future star, not rising name, superstar, present tense, now. And yet, within the WTA's commercial architecture, her promotional treatment remained that of a developing player. Limited feature real estate on the official website, minimal inclusion in WTA tour promotional campaigns, a conspicuous absence from flagship marketing materials that prominently featured players ranked below her in merchandise performance. The gap between what the market said about Eala and what the institutional machinery reflected was not subtle, it was glaring, and fans noticed. Social media erupted. Fan accounts across the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and the global tennis community began documenting the disparity. Screenshots of WTA promotional emails featuring Swiatek and Goff without any Eala mention, despite her higher jersey sales. Side-by-side comparisons of homepage placements, tournament feature articles that buried her achievements beneath those of players she had already defeated. The hashtag spread fast. The conversation spread faster. And then, someone with a much larger platform decided to speak. The thing about institutional bias is that it rarely announces itself. It doesn't send a press release. It operates through quiet decisions. Which player gets the premium court time slot, which face appears on the tournament banner, whose post-match interview gets promoted across official channels. At the Dubai Championships, Eala was moved to the night session start, a scheduling adjustment that had a knock-on effect on crowd numbers for another player. Tournament organizers felt they had reasons, but the switch raised questions. It also raised a broader pattern that tennis observers had been cataloging for months. Former players, tennis journalists, and prominent voices in the sport began drawing connections. If a player generates the most merchandise revenue, sells the most tickets, attracts the largest crowds, and consistently defeats players ranked above her, what would her promotional treatment look like if her name was different, if her passport was from a different country, if her fan base was centered in Western Europe rather than Southeast Asia? These are uncomfortable questions. They're meant to be uncomfortable because the discomfort is the point. Ayala's popularity has not been overlooked by sponsors. Nike, Babolat, Globe Telecom, Bank of the Philippine Islands, and Locally Juice are among her backers. Big companies are looking at her story and seeing comparisons to Emma Raducanu's trajectory after her 2021 U.S. Open win. Private corporations moved faster than the WTA. Nike positioned her portrait in the Global Ambassador Tunnel at their world headquarters. Sponsors lined up. Vogue Philippines put her on the cover. The commercial world understood exactly what it was looking at. The institutional world lagged, and that lag, deliberate or structural, became the story. Fans didn't need an official statement to form their conclusion. When the organization tasked with promoting women's tennis launches an internal investigation into why its most commercially magnetic active player is selling too many jerseys, the narrative writes itself. Eala herself, in an interview with Vogue Philippines, said, "I like to emulate the best of us Filipinos. She carries the weight of representation with intention. You just want to be a good person," she said, adding that this remains just as important as anything she achieves on court. She wasn't speaking about boardrooms, she was speaking about character, but those words landed differently once the investigation story broke, because while Suits debated her sales figures in air-conditioned conference rooms, she was in Miami, preparing to compete again, carrying a nation on her back with a smile. But this story doesn't end with outrage. It ends with something far more powerful. Investigations have a way of revealing more about the investigators than the investigated. Every document reviewed, every merchandise report examined, every scheduling decision audited, all of it pointed to one singular conclusion. Alex Eala didn't break the WTA's system. She exposed how narrow that system had always been. Now seated, number 31, The world number 29, Eala, enters the 2026 Miami Open with a first-round bye, potentially facing Iga Swiatek in the round of 32, the same Swiatek whose jersey she outperformed, the same tournament where 12 months earlier, as an unseeded wildcard, she arrived and rewrote the entire script of what was considered possible. Eala is the first Filipino to break into the top 30, the first to have multiple wins over top 10 players and major champions, and the first to reach a tour-level final in the Open era. First. 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 The word appears so frequently in her biography that it stops feeling like a milestone and starts feeling like a personality trait. The Jersey investigation, whatever its official conclusion, produced one unambiguous result: international media attention cascading onto the very commercial disparity the WTA had hoped to quietly manage. Tennis 365 ran features, Tennis Head published analysis, Filipino sports publications mobilized, Global Tennis Twitter, whatever it called itself now, spent 48 straight hours dissecting the implications. Eala has been warned that her newfound success could eventually become a burden. This was the burden they meant, not the crowds, not the endorsements, the politics. But here is what the politics missed. Commercial dominance at Eala's level is not a problem to be managed. It's a market declaring, with unprecedented clarity, that women's tennis has a new gravitational center. The sport doesn't get to vote on that. Neither does a boardroom. Eala addressed the impact of her fame when she returns to Quezon City. It's weird because being at home is like the most normal thing, right? But being famous at home, I walk around the streets or go to the restaurants I've gone to since I was a kid, and all of a sudden people are asking for photos. It's something to get used to. Something to get used to. 4 words that carry the entire weight of what happens when overnight transformation meets everyday reality. She is still the girl from Quezon City, and she is simultaneously one of the most commercially powerful athletes in women's sports. Both things are true. Both are extraordinary. 20 years old, world number 29, the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA history. Jersey sales exceeding every name in the sport, crowds that follow her across continents, a Nike portrait in a hall built for legends, and an investigation launched not because she broke any rule, but because she broke every expectation. History has a consistent relationship with pioneers. It first questions them, then audits them, then, inevitably, immortalizes them. Alex Eala is currently in the questioning and auditing phase. The immortalization is simply a matter of time. She said in her Vogue Philippines interview, "I'm so proud of myself and what I've accomplished. I'm also proud and grateful for the team and all the effort they've put in. No anger, no political statement, no boardroom posturing, just gratitude and hunger. The 2 qualities that built everything she has, and the 2 qualities that will carry her past every obstacle placed in the path. At the age of 20, she has time on her side to develop her physicality and her presence on court. Sky Sports' Gigi Salmon wasn't wrong. The trajectory points somewhere extraordinary, and no internal memo will redirect it. The WTA investigation into Eala's jersey sales will be filed somewhere, cataloged, forgotten by most who participated in it. But the jerseys themselves, the ones with Sampaguita flowers and a Filipino name, those won't be forgotten, because every one of those jerseys is on someone's back right now. In Manila, in Miami, in Dubai, in Auckland, in cities where tennis was never supposed to matter this much. She didn't just outsell a roster, she expanded the universe of people who care about the sport. And no organization with a genuine investment in women's tennis should ever investigate that. They should celebrate it. So here is the question this story leaves you with. One that every tennis fan, every sports administrator, and every organization claiming to champion equality in athletics must eventually answer. When the market speaks louder than any policy document ever could, when a 20-year-old from the Philippines makes every sponsor, every stadium, and every screen light up, does the institution protect its legacy, or does it evolve to deserve one? Leave your answer below, because this conversation is far from finished. If this story moved you, if you believe women's tennis deserves better than boardroom politics, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell, because the next chapter of Alex Eala's story is being written right now, and you don't want to miss a single word of it.